You're listening to Mystic Magic, exploring our spirit to understand our lives. I'm your hostess, Celeste A. Frazier, and my topic today is the div in diversity. Div meaning the divine, of course. And today's guest is the divine Tracy Brown, extraordinary diversity and inclusion trainer, licensed practitioner, author, leader, and so much more. It's going to be a fun show. Stay tuned.
Hey, Mystic Magic fans, it's Celeste A. Frazier with Mystic Magic. I am so pleased to have our guest today, Tracy Brown. She is an amazing person. She is a wonderful diversity trainer. She's a leader. She's a practitioner of religious science. I'm going to give you a little bit more information about her as we explore the div in diversity today as our topic. Our topic is about the divine in diversity and how our spirit is really omniscient when it thinks about creating, and it creates diverse in millions and trillions of ways. And so we get to know that just as the plant kingdom can live amongst other species and other types of expressions, that humans can too. Tracy Brown is the founder of Stained Glass Spirit, and after working for more than 20 years on diversity and inclusion strategy in organizations nationwide, she created Stained Glass Spirit to focus attention on attracting diversity and creating inclusion in New Thought spiritual communities. Tracy's been a student of New Thought Ancient Wisdom since 1986. She is uniquely qualified to be a bridge between organizational best practice, individual responsibility, and spiritual truth. Her book, I Turn to Prayer, is a collection of prayers and prayerful poems. Tracy's an accomplished speaker and a published author who's known for her ability to engage people in sensitive conversations. While the majority of her work includes all dimensions of diversity and building a practical strategy for inclusion, she's also well known for her contribution to initiatives focused on race, racism, and race relations. As a result of Tracy's What Is Mine to Do TEDx talk, she began moderating the Mine to Do Facebook group, which challenges people of faith to be proactive in reducing race-based hatred and violence. In addition to working in corporations and associations nationwide, she has worked with a variety of faith-based organizations. She's been on the faculty for Holmes Institute and for the Center for Spiritual Living School for Spiritual Leadership. And she's designed and delivered educational programs for American Baptist churches, Evangelical Lutheran churches, and United Methodist Movement. So she's a frequently requested speaker for Sunday services and facilitating retreats. And so Tracy is also producing and hosting several internet radio shows, including Intentionally Inclusive, a podcast specifically focused on what leaders of spiritual communities need to know and to do to inspire inclusion. Welcome, Tracy Brown.
Whew, that was a mouthful.
Indeed.
I'm delighted to hang out with you, Reverend Celeste.
And I am so grateful that you're here today. Now, you are a master of diversity, and you've had a few summits now on diversity over this last couple of months. It seems like you've kind of multiplied your efforts and productions around the topic, which is fabulous. Tell me what that's been like for you and what you've gleaned from doing these different summits.
It's been great. It has been so great to bring different people together and have them share from their own perspective why our teachings and our spiritual grounding compels us to take action, to be inclusive, to end racism. And I have to share with you and your listeners, it's been something that has given me so much life. Like when you're doing this work all the time as I am, it's easy to just be on automatic. But to have people like you, Celeste, and a couple dozen others come in and give their perspective and share, what Bible verses or what spiritual practices or how meditation, right? How these different things sustain them and inspire them to be a part of the change. Oh my goodness, it has been fabulous.
Yeah, it has. I had a lot of fun having done that myself. So listen, you have a website called reclaimjoy.com, and there's a lot of inspirational materials there. What's the purpose of that website?
So sometimes people slyly or quietly ask me, like, are you one person or are you five? And because there are so many things that I do that for me are just an expression of me and feel very integrated, but for other people can be a little strange. So we just talked about the work that I do with Stained Glass Spirit and diversity and spirituality and inclusion and oneness and where they intersect. But the Reclaim Joy site is really about going to your spiritual center no matter what is going on in your life. So I often say, no matter what situation you're in, you can find joy within. And it's about practices and inspirational messages and quotations and scriptures and videos, things that remind us that even though we're living in the insanity of the physical world, there is an inner joy and inner peace. And we, in my opinion, for me, I must tap into that every day, or I would be enraged. I would not be easy to be around.
Yes, the
So
practice is
Reclaim Joy
necessary.
is about that. This just reminding us and inspiring myself, honestly, inspiring myself
Yeah.
to remember that I do, at the core of me, have a spiritual center, and I know how to return to it again and again.
Yes, that's the practice of a practitioner. Now, you are a religious science licensed practitioner. We have had other religious science practitioners on Mystic Magic. Would you please give your rendition of what a licensed practitioner is for our audience?
Sure. A licensed practitioner in the science of mind, religious science, is someone who has, just as an entry point, taken just under 500 hours of classes to not only apply spiritual principle in their own life, but to learn how to teach it and to guide others with spiritual principle and spiritual practice in mind. And licensed practitioners are in service to the spiritual community. They're part of the ecclesiastic team or the leadership team from a spiritual point of view, and they teach classes, they provide spiritual coaching. We are able to speak, and usually we're leaders in the community. So it's a leadership role, and it is a role of service that says, I commit to doing my spiritual work, and I commit to being in service to others who want to do their spiritual work.
Yes. Now, you did a TED Talk based on the massacre of the Charleston Nine. And then I know that had such a big impact on you. Where did that take you, that particular horrific event?
Yeah, well, having 9 people murdered after doing Bible study in a place that our society says is, a sacred place, in a church, and in this case, in a very historic church.
Yes.
It was horrifying, and we've all experienced lots of horrifying things that human beings do to other human beings. And to have a young white man say he wanted to start a race war and he intended to kill Black people, and then he did it, was particularly shocking
Yes.
for many people. So what is mine to do came out of that, because the next day after that murder, I happened to find myself in a courtroom because I was there for jury duty. And the question came up, I believe I could be fair if I were a juror on that particular case? Young white man kills 9 Black people. And then I started thinking of different combinations of young man or young woman and different populations. And at the same time, all of America was saying, what can I do? Many white people were saying, this is ridiculous, this is unacceptable, I want to get involved, but I don't know what to do. So out of that came the Facebook group, and then the website, What Is Mine to Do? And the TED Talk came from that as well, because that day in jury duty, a man reached over to me when he noticed I was crying and asked if there was anything he could do. And my answer to him was yes. What you can do as a white man is tell everyone you know that even though you are white, you believe and feel strongly that the killing of Black people because of the color of their skin must stop. And that then led to everybody can answer that question. What is mine to do with the people I meet, the people I come into contact with, the people I influence? What can I do to interrupt or end race-based hatred or violence?
Yeah, I don't know if I shared this with you, but as a result of that, I was so devastated that I went to Wednesday night Bible studies for 9 Wednesdays to different AMEs in the city and suburbs, just to be with them. And the first one I went to, I took my white congregation. I was a minister of a predominantly white congregation. And I was very nervous that Sunday after, because I never thought about being killed at church before, because it is such a sacred place and it's where I work, and it was never a place I thought I needed to be scared at. So it had an impact definitely on Black people, and they did achieve that much.
Yes, but we will not be devastated. Maya Angelou has a quote that I will paraphrase since I can't remember it exactly right now, but she basically says, events can slow you down, events can have an impact on you, but they will not stop you, they will not devastate you, and it's like you keep going.
Yes.
You keep going, and definitely Black people in the United States have learned to keep going. And I love, that you're doing this podcast, because it is that going into spirit and remembering and allowing spirit to guide, often in mystical ways that don't make any sense from a logical perspective. And
Right.
it is that guidance that allows us to continue to evolve and thrive.
Well, yeah, that's the only thing you have to rely on. And for me, because I didn't know what to do, all I could do was just love everybody up. I just, after my talk, I just went and hugged everybody in the audience, because I know perfect love casts out all fear. So that's where I knew to go, that I would not fail. So now you have been the chairperson of the Leadership Council for the Centers for Spiritual Living, its governing body, for a number of years until your term recently ended a few months ago. Um, how did you get there? What made you do that? And what compelled you or inspired you to go in that direction?
Someone gave me this card during the time that I was in leadership, and what it says on the outside is there's a dialogue happening. And the first one is, "That's a crazy idea. Insane. It doesn't make any sense. You'll do it?" "Of course," I replied. And that's often how I felt. Stepping into leadership was a natural thing for me to do. In every organization I've been in, I've been a leader in some way, and I've served on a dozen boards of trustees or board of directors for nonprofits in my adult life. So being involved in Centers for Spiritual Living, which has, over 450 ministries globally. I was involved. I became a licensed practitioner. It's like, okay, how can I serve? How can I bring my business background? How can I bring my spiritual grounding to serve this organization? So that, doesn't seem so out of the pattern of Tracy Brown's life. But to do it in a spiritual organization was challenging. And being the chair of the board, excuse me, the chair of the leadership council was not like in my vision for what I was going to do. But I feel really blessed to have had the opportunity through times when the organization was really becoming, and so there were a lot of changes. There was a lot of growing happening.
Right.
And I got to meet a lot of great people, and every day decide, do I believe the spiritual stuff that I teach or not?
Right.
Because every single day, I had to practice.
I was thinking that probably meant that you had to go deeper and that you had to really lean on faith even greater than before.
Yeah, it was definitely a faith walk. And it doesn't mean you never have negative thoughts about anyone. It doesn't mean that you don't sometimes say the wrong thing. I mean, I did all of that because I'm human, right? I am having the human experience. I do have human emotions. I do get frustrated, and I've been trained and I've committed my life to going high.
Yes.
I've committed my life, right, to experiment with these spiritual principles, with living a spirit grounded life. So it's like, okay, it's all here for me to practice.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I was just being with this lesson, God is in everything I see today, from A Course in Miracles. And it just really became clearer to me that unless we're really seeing people from who they are, not only when they're in pain, but when they're in their strengths, we're not seeing them as God sees them. And every day we're being called to see people as God sees them. And there's a bigger picture. It's more panoramic, and it's not just what we're seeing through our pain or our fears. So yeah,
we just remember that, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why we practice as practitioners, right? Now tell me, you got a lot of stuff going on. I know you like to stay busy. What would you like for our listeners to know about what's coming up and where they can find out about your diversity work, your practitioner work, your books? You got a lot of stuff, a lot of material.
Yeah, I do. I think a couple of things come to mind. So I recently started a a series called Walk Your Talk, Walk Your Stained Glass Spiritual Talk. And it is about being a leader and applying spiritual principle and, 10 or 15-minute segments. So you can find out more about that and everything else related to diversity and inclusion and spiritually guided people at stainedglassspirit.net. And I've been getting a lot of requests to talk more about the stained glass spirit concept, especially as we apply it to race and racism because of what's been going on in the world. And so I've been doing a lot of talking about the book, Stained Glass Spirit, and I have recommitted to getting the next book out in the next few months so that people have practical actions they can take once they understand the big why it's so important to be involved, to end racism, to end gender inequity, to end all of the ways that we separate ourselves from other human beings.
I love the analogy that you use in your book, Stained Glass Spirit, about how all the pieces are different, right?
Yeah.
And it's really a great guide for people. I know you have like another 3 books. You got a book called I Turn to Prayer. You got a website too called I Turn to Prayer, right?
I do. So that's the, spiritually grounded and trained spiritual practitioner and leader in me. I Turn to Prayer just is a collection of 300 pages of prayers in different formats for different situations. And I just ask the question of myself, what do people ask for prayer about all the time?
Sure.
And so that's a great reference. It's not a sit down and read the book. It is a pick it up and, oh, that prayer inspires me, or pick it up and scan the table of contents and go, oh yeah, that I need that today.
So it's kind of a guide and workbook.
Yeah, and it really is a reference. A number of people say they have told me they, keep it on their nightstand, or they, have it at hand, and they just open up to a random page, or when they're going through something, they look, maybe they're having financial challenges and they'll look for prayers that are related to money and abundance and prosperity, and read them and contemplate them.
Right. Now you've got a lot of events that you do on Facebook. Do you want to tell us how to find you?
So there are 3 places. I have to think, what? There are 3 places. So one, on Facebook, there is a Stained Glass Spirit Facebook page. And so, of course, that's a good place to go again if you're looking for how to integrate that mystical, spiritual part of you with your everyday life. Reclaim Joy also has a Facebook page, so that if you're simply looking for spiritual motivation or reinforcement, that's a place. But the place I spend the most time is at the What Is Mine to Do group. It's a public group on Facebook where every day there are over 6,000 people asking the question and answering the question, what is mine to do to interrupt or end race-based hatred or violence? And the whole group posts articles and recommends books and poses questions to each other, as well as sharing any current news about things so that we are aware of what's going on, so that we can then deny the power of those incidents to actually drive humanity going forward.
And I love that you require us to say, what is mine to do? Because it makes me think, instead of just posting something, what am I to do with this information? Because it's going somewhere in my psyche, but does it need to just sit there? Can I act on this? What is it driving me to do? What is coming to mind? It's kind of almost like a booster. And I know you do a lot of your broadcasting on there, but you also do broadcasting on stained glass window and YouTube, right?
Yeah. So if you put in Tracy Brown and diversity, or you put in Tracy Brown and racism, or if you put in Tracy Brown and spirituality, you're going to find lots of links to follow. I long ago gave up the idea that I might be able to be incognito. Once the internet hit, it's like I am really easy to find.
And thank God for that, because you are a wonderful leader and you are gracious and you are very wise and knowledgeable. And I'm going to tell people about tracybrown.com. Although not all the events are there, you'll find more of the events on Facebook, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah. So tracybrown.com is a place where everything is centralized. So if you know my name, right, you can go there, and then there are links to everything else. So it is especially for my corporate business, that is the place, because I do a lot of work with corporations on diversity and inclusion and equity. So that's where most of my corporate clients go, but there are links to everything else right there as well.
Okay, that's TRACY Brown.com. That's Tracy without an E. So thank you so much for being here today, Tracy. I so appreciate you, and I'm grateful that you were able to take some time to be with me today.
My honor.
All right, this is Mystic Magic, exploring our spirit to understand our lives.
The div in diversity is fit for university. For all of infinity, we all are divinity. No two are the same. Individually we came, for not one could reveal the universal appeal. It's time for humanity to ditch our own vanity. For when one seeks, one finds the beauty of the divine in each and every kind. All of nature is a class that each of us can pass. The moment we believe God would conceive, all its creation is great, and there is no one to hate. Red, yellow, black, and white, regardless of gender, weight, or height, everyone is in divine order. There is no need for a border. We each have the same source. God has no remorse. It is quite happy with its designs. For each of us, it pines. There are no favorites or rejects. The first is loved as well as the next. When we learn we have no rival and stop worrying about survival, we'll continue to reap what we sow. We'll awaken to what we know. Each of us belongs here, and there's nothing to fear. God holds each of us dear, and it is always near. It's time for us to graduate and choose love over hate, because love is real and fear is not, so love is all we've got. So smile, rise, and celebrate. There is no need to wait. The time is now, so take a bow and hear the applause from the cause. It loves you as you are, a bright, beautiful, magnificent, eternal, shining star. Thank you for tuning in today. My name is Celeste A. Frazier, and this is Mystic Magic. We'll be back next week when the topic will be Speakeasy about vixens, miracles, and racism. And my guest will be the passionate, caring, and brilliant Maureen Muldoon. Please see our show notes for further information about today's topics. Please leave a review if you'd like. And for more podcasts, go ahead and subscribe if you would. If this episode has been good for you, feel free to support the show. You can also find Mystic Magic at Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other great podcast venues. This is Mystic Magic, exploring our spirit to understand our lives.